thinking of you wherever you are. We pray for our sorrows to end, and hope that our hearts will blend.
Now I will step forward to realize this wish. And who knows? Starting a new journey may not be so hard. Or maybe it's already begun. There are many worlds, but they share the same sky. One sky, one destiny.
Light.
The door to light.
We'll go together. Yeah.
March 28th, 2006. An 8-year-old boy eagerly awaits the sequel to one of his favorite games. He didn't know what to expect, he hadn't seen many commercials, he didn't quite know what the internet was, and the most he knew was based on hearsay from his friends. Despite all that, he was excited. He got his hands on a rented copy from his local Blockbuster weeks after the initial release, and sunk an unholy measure of time into it. He learned the ins and outs, discovering Final Form while drive leveling, figuring out how to obtain the Ultima Keyblade, fighting Sephiroth over and over in a futile attempt to beat him once and for all. He'd report back to his friends at lunchtime every day, learning every little intricacy, renting it as much as he could get away with. Kingdom Hearts 2 quickly stole his life away. 12 years later, and I still think about it constantly. Never before has a game left such a visible impact on my life and its progression. I often find myself watching speedruns into the night, wondering if maybe one day I'll be good enough to start. Tetsuya Nomura has a stranglehold on my heart, and he won't let go. Strangely, I don't mind. I'm gonna be upfront about this. Kingdom Hearts 2 is far and away my favorite game in the series, one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 2, one of the most nostalgic games I own, and a strong contender for my favorite game of all time. You're gonna have to forgive me if I seem just a teensy bit biased. I wouldn't be who I am today without this dumb game and its dumb story and its dumb, magical fun. It's funny, usually the games I feel the most nostalgia for end up degrading over time, losing their shine. Some games just don't age very well, at least not by my standards, and that's a shame. Thankfully, I consider Kingdom Hearts 2 living proof of the opposite effect. It earns its status on almost all fronts, as opposed to most classics which have one or two fantastic qualities that are ultimately outweighed by everything else. Not to suggest there are no flaws, more that the flaws are so insignificant when paired with everything it does right. As far as sequels go, I really couldn't ask for anything better. So now you know where I'm coming from right out of the gate. If you don't want incessant, borderline annoying levels of positivity, this isn't the video for you. My critical vocabulary has been quite negative as of late, so let me shed at least a little bit of light onto why I love video games so damn much. You're about to watch a retrospective on one of the best games ever made. I should probably warn you that watching my previous two videos on the series will help you to better understand how I structure them. In the last one, I established that I will be doing very brief plot recaps to make sure we're all on the same page, and to better illustrate how absolutely screwed everything gets later on. Thankfully, this will be extra brief, because not a lot happened in Chain of Memories anyway. All you really need to keep in mind is that Sora is in a deep sleep, getting his memories restored by Naminé, meaning that he will forget all about his adventures in Castle Oblivion. Riku had an adventure as well, but he retained his memories. Not much to say other than he started developing as a character, struggling to battle his inner darkness. He finds King Mickey, meets a mysterious man named Diz, and resolves to balance the light and darkness within him while Sora is asleep. The organization were also introduced, and the following members died: Vexen, Lexius, Zexion, Larxene, and Marluxia. Axel actually did a lot of that killing, and is the sole survivor. Really, you should just keep in mind that Sora promised to reunite with Naminé one day, that Riku and Mickey are off on an adventure, and that Axel is still out there somewhere doing who knows what. Which brings us straight into Kingdom Hearts 2, into Twilight Town. Let's set the scene. You've booted up Kingdom Hearts 2 for the first time. You've defeated Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, closed Kingdom Hearts, and promised Kairi that you'd reunite one day. We could also assume you've played Chain of Memories, but there's a very high likelihood you didn't even know it existed, so we can leave that to the side for now. You watch the excellent opening with music by Utada Hikaru, which I can't place anywhere in this video for fear of massive copyright backlash, even though Sanctuary is one of my favorite songs ever produced, but oh well. Everything is hunky-dory until you get near the end and some unfamiliar faces pop up. Pink-haired man with scythe, blonde girl in white dress, a weird spiky-haired blonde boy, strange people in black coats, glitchy flashbacks to Kingdom Hearts 1, until finally the blonde boy wakes up saying,
Another dream about him.
Boom. Twilight Town. You then play about maybe 2 to 3 hours of this random guy's summer vacation, with occasional glimpses to the past, cuts to other weird cloaked figures, and general confusion as the world begins to stop and start on a whim. You're confused. Where's Sora? Donald? Goofy? Riku? Kairi? Chip and Dale? Who is this blonde anime boy? You'd only know Twilight Town if you'd played Chain of Memories, which as far as anyone knew was just some spin-off. Still doesn't explain who this guy is, or this guy, or this guy, or this girl, or... Yeah, the opening of this game is certainly a bait and switch, yet for this, and for so many other reasons, it's a genius opener. I know, this just in, local millennial trash says he thinks the opening to Kingdom Hearts 2 is genius. I get it, seems fishy. At least let me explain. First, there's an important point we need to establish straight away. Nomura never intended to create Chain of Memories. As far as he was concerned, he was just going to make a sequel. The only reason he made it was to satisfy the kids who didn't have a PS2 and wanted to play Kingdom Hearts. He's just a madman who needs to make every single one of his games plot relevant in some way, even this. Here's the interesting part. He had always intended to open Kingdom Hearts 2 in the way that he did. He wanted that sense of intrigue, that sense of mystery. Chain of Memories only served to fill in those gaps for dedicated fans. For that reason, I think the confusion was always intentional, though somewhere along the way he may have compromised this point in favor of making the series more accessible upon releasing the HD collections. Instead of ordering them by release, he put 358 Days Over 2 before Kingdom Hearts 2. 358 is the story of Roxas and the organization right before the events of 2 kick off. Unfortunately, I do not think people should be consuming it this way. Not to dive too heavily into 358, but the end of that game is almost a direct transition into the beginning of 2. And if you watch or even play that after Chain of Memories, almost all of that initial intrigue and mystery will be gone. Maybe that's good for you, but I think that defeats the point. Again, Nomura stated that he originally intended to open Kingdom Hearts 2 in a confusing, mysterious way. We don't necessarily know if he would have made the same opening, but I think we can be relatively sure it wouldn't be super different. I'm convinced he made Chain of Memories' plot somewhat inconsequential to strengthen the opening to 2. Everyone complains that you need to play this random spin-off GBA game to understand what's going on, but really, do you actually need to play Chain of Memories? You won't know who some of these characters are, but that's about it. In fact, since Sora loses all of his memories from Castle Oblivion, you could even say that the player is right along with him, Donald, and Goofy in feeling completely lost, thrust through time without a clue what happened. Similarly, you're supposed to be confused alongside Roxas as he slowly unravels the simulation, finds out who he truly is, and reconnects with Sora. You're not really supposed to know what's going on yet, and I think that's definitely intentional. Now, obviously, play these fucking games too? I'm not suggesting you start skipping around, that won't end well. I'm just trying to defend this opening a little bit. In context, it's really neat. You're just a boy living out a summer vacation, slowly realizing that he isn't actually a person, lives within the boundaries of a fake life set up for him, and needs to immediately fade away so that Sora can go on existing. The opening is long enough for me to connect with the town, the characters within it, and especially Roxas's plight. Maybe it's weird to gather money so these kids can go to the beach, or investigate the 7 wonders for a homework assignment. Yet, without these elements, the rest of the story wouldn't work nearly as well. There's an air of inevitability to his story that you simply wouldn't connect with if you didn't see these friends bumming around their day-to-day, seemingly treated like garbage by most of the other actors involved. If I'm honest, it's surprising just how harshly the characters we know treat Roxas. Diz certainly isn't perfect, so I can understand why he'd create a fake life for Roxas as a means to an end, without much thought as to who he'd be hurting in the process. But Riku? That's an interesting one. He knows Roxas is Sora's nobody, yet seems to align with Diz. Maybe less calculated, but still ready and willing to restore Sora by sacrificing Roxas. And meanwhile, I'm sure even you as the player harbor at least a little anger at Roxas, especially near the beginning. He doesn't do much fighting, and most of his screen time is devoted to dumb minigames and triangle presses, so doubtless every single one of us, at some point in our lives, just wanted to shout at our screens wondering when we'd be able to play as Sora, when we'd be able to travel to the Disney Worlds again, meet up with Riku and Kairi. As much as I appreciate playing the opening now, I didn't always hold this steadfast belief, especially on a first playthrough. I was just as confused and frustrated as everyone else, which is essential to tee up what I believe to be the thematic core of Kingdom Hearts 2. It kicks off with this line.
You're lucky. Looks like my summer vacation is over.
Sora is and always has been a fantastic link to the player in the sense that he's a fun puppet. You can't necessarily place yourself in his shoes the same way you would a blank slate or a silent protagonist, but it is much more fun to control Sora thanks to his bright and bubbly personality. Trying to guide him on his way to find Riku and Kairi is a pleasure not many would be able to refuse with a straight face. I mean, just look at him. How can you refuse this pure-hearted boy? He was an absolute pleasure to follow in the first game, though that game's story was a fairly simple hero's journey. Controlling him to victory came with trials and tribulations that were less esoteric in nature, leading to a fairly simple bout between good versus evil. Thanks to the opening of the sequel, everything is just a smidge different. Occasionally, while you help out Disney characters, you'll be approached by an organization member and cryptically reminded of your betrayal, referred to by the name Roxas.
Wait a sec. Roxas? Excuse me? Roxas? Silence, traitor.
Sora! Roxas!
Roxas? Hey, did he just call me Roxas?
Almost as if the game is slyly pointing its finger at you, saying, hey, you started having a lot of fun when Sora was complete, didn't ya? We aren't gonna let you forget about Roxas. It's as if Roxas's presence is screaming at you the entire game, making sure you never truly forget that he's still inside Sora, until you're forced to fight him in the world that never was. Roxas fights so hard to claim his own independence, to prove that his life really did mean something once upon a time, until you defeat him and it all comes crashing down. He realizes why Sora needs to be somebody, why Sora deserves to be somebody. All of the people he's connected to, all the people that need him, while it may not be ideal, he lays down his arms and admits defeat, proclaiming Sora as a good other. Honestly, as satisfying as it is to finally stick it to this difficult boss, it's hard to ultimately feel content. You defeated him, but really it feels like you just pushed Roxas away, forced him to accept that he needs to let Sora be his own person. It gets you thinking about the organization, their plan to create hearts to fill their empty bodies. It gets you thinking about the idea of a nobody, a splinter of a real person forever cloaked in their shadow. It's no wonder the organization formed in the first place. Nobody had any idea what they should do. Only a person who approached them and told them they had no hearts, no place to call home. This person gives them a name, a home, and a purpose. That's why I love Xemnas. A textbook sociopath, he knows how to brainwash and manipulate people to his side. He's genuinely scary in that way, in no small part thanks to his booming voice.
How long has it been since I abandoned that name? I know nothing of any Kairi. As for Riku, perhaps you should ask your king.
So, it seems your hearts have led you to obliteration. Perhaps it doesn't pay to be too loyal to one's heart.
Axel seems to genuinely struggle with his allegiances after losing Roxas. As the game goes on, he loses more and more of his purpose until he dies protecting the person who, for all intents and purposes, took away his best friend. I know I'm gonna get people who tell me you're looking into this way too much, but I think Axel wanted to die there, helping Sora. Listen to what he says here.
He was the only one I liked. He made me feel like I had a heart.
Roxas was the only person he liked, ripped away from him. His only remaining purpose to somehow see Roxas again. I think it's a stretch to say he was suicidal, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that he was lost. He had no idea where he was going, what he should be doing, and probably had very little regard for himself after failing to save Roxas. After all, they really are nobodies at the end of the day. Riku had a similar identity crisis after failing to combat the darkness inside him. He hid away for most of the game, choosing to assist Sora from the shadows and embrace his failure. I'm sure it was hard for him to accept that he even made any progress, considering he was the spitting image of the man he hates more than anything. From Sora's point of view, though, the way he looks doesn't matter at all. He sees Riku and that's that. Reason number 487 as to why Sora is the best character in the series. It all links back to a loose theme of identity. Who am I? What am I supposed to do? Piecing that together is part of why I love these characters so much. Watching them struggle, watching them fail, watching them succeed, watching them reunite. This is why people love Kingdom Hearts. From the outside, the story is a mess of contrivances and plot holes and all manner of poor writing, but on the inside, well, it's still a mess, but it's a beautiful mess. You start to realize that although there's a lot happening, you're invested in it anyway because it means you can look forward to certain characters finding each other or developing. I can't understand what people mean when they say that this game's story is complicated and pointless in comparison to the first game, even though it isn't all that much different at its core. Even the Disney worlds tie into this idea. Mulan struggles with her gender identity, Beast struggles with his self-consciousness, Hercules struggles with his confidence, Simba struggles with his purpose, Jack struggles with his identity. Aladdin doesn't really struggle with much of anything. In fact, Agrabah is really pointless in the grand scheme. Pirates of the Caribbean, yeah, haha, it's jarring, but it also didn't delve far enough into Will Turner's struggle with his legacy in the same way the movie did. I get it. Some of these worlds feel like filler, and some moments of these worlds don't slot in the same way they did in the first game, but I think people exaggerate when they say the Disney worlds are pointless. While they might be following the movie plots closely, the movie plots fit remarkably well. It is a little disappointing that the League of Villains disbanded and mostly stick to their respective worlds now, but I guess that's just how it is after suffering such a huge defeat. Maleficent can't convince, or doesn't want to convince the band to get back together, so she just gets Pete instead, who she knows will follow her to the ends of the earth. Plus, let's be honest, as cool as it was to see the Round Table villain scene in Kingdom Hearts 1, how much did that ultimately matter to the story? We got maybe one scene where Maleficent talks to Jafar and warns him about something, and he doesn't listen. Something similar happens in this game too, when Maleficent brings Oogie Boogie back and eventually gets angry at him. The first game also didn't have a rogues gallery of original villains to contend with, it was just Ansem. Now we have Demyx, Zaldin, Luxord, Saïx, Xigbar, and Xemnas to fill that rogues gallery. Though maybe I can at least concede that revisiting the worlds was a little strange. We could have had the organization members popping up in the worlds proper with their boss fights, instead of saving most of it for the second half. I don't really have a problem with revisiting the worlds again, since you're doing something new, but it would have made a lot more sense to finish all of the plot in one visit anyway. All I'm saying is, the Disney worlds have more of a point than people give them credit for. Isn't the inherent joy in watching Sora, Donald, and Goofy interact with Disney characters anyway? It's about as silly and fanfiction-y as you can reasonably get away with. As a sequel to Kingdom Hearts 1, it hits all the beats I would have wanted and goes beyond it with twists and turns not unlike the original. You can't tell me you weren't at least a little surprised when you found out that all the Heartless you were mindlessly killing, about 1,000 or so right beforehand, were all aiding Organization 13 in their plans to awaken Kingdom Hearts. Twists like these are so much fun precisely because they link into what you've been doing, and likely haven't been thinking all that much about. It reframes the entire first half. We get immensely satisfying payoffs near the end when Sora reunites with Riku and Kairi. Finally, after the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, Sora, Riku, and Kairi are together again. Really, the kicker is that Riku is finally back. He's been gone since the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1, and every other time you met him, he was evil, possessed, or fake. From Sora's perspective, the last time he truly saw Riku was when he closed the door to Kingdom Hearts. That's probably why he cries so much after finding him. Though I'm not going to say there still isn't something more to these emotional Sora and Riku scenes. I mean, hey, don't say it isn't possible. Kairi finishing the Paopu fruit drawing has convinced me that Sora and Kairi will be the canon pairing, but sometimes I get the feeling that even Nomura regrets setting that up.
Riku! It's Riku. Riku's here. I looked for you.
Come on, Sora. You've got to pull it together.
I looked everywhere for you.
By far my favorite thing about Kingdom Hearts 2, and the series as a whole, is how it champions raw emotion. Allow me to give perhaps the dumbest example, Goofy's death scene. This is probably my favorite cutscene in any of these games for what it represents. Not only does it hype me up every single time without fail, it's a perfect microcosm of the Kingdom Hearts experience. Goofy gets bonked on the head, everyone thinks he's dead except for the audience. Despite that, watching Mickey throw off his cloak, rush at the Heartless seeking revenge, all while Vim and Vigor starts playing, is indescribably amazing. Nomura's talent to extract a sense of seriousness from the absurd is unparalleled. Here we have Goofy getting hit in the head by a rock, and no one in their right mind would ever think he's dead, but somehow watching his friends get super angry about it is hype-worthy. Watching Mickey Mouse get serious. This is what Kingdom Hearts is all about. Raw emotion. I pay less attention to what's actually being written and more to what I end up feeling in the end. Nomura seems to enjoy conveying information as stylistically as he can, and I completely dig that. Trust me, there's a version of Kingdom Hearts out there where the information is easier to digest because it was conveyed in a simpler way, but that's just not what Kingdom Hearts is to me. The series has always been good at generating hype moments, and that's why it's such a fun ride. Never taking itself too seriously, it's allowed to get away with a few moments where maybe the plot drives off a cliff, because you know it will eventually serve a rad purpose. You might initially scoff at the idea of a nobody, saying that it complicates the already simple idea of the Heartless, yet I have no issue with it because it allows Nomura to dive into the concept of a nobody, while also having an excuse to create interesting new enemy types and boss fights. I don't think it's lazy or wrong to write a story like this when clearly so many people are into his writing style. It simply means that he prioritizes certain elements of storytelling over other, more traditional elements. Many people consider that to be the wrong way to go about storytelling, so who knows? I might be on the wrong side of history, but considering it's the side of history where I can watch Mickey Mouse flip around like a Jedi Master, I don't think I care.
They'll pay for this.
It helps that you aren't simply shown hype, you get to play it out. As soon as Goofy dies, you run through a gauntlet of Heartless with help from various Final Fantasy characters. How you dispatch them is up to you. You could use a dry form, though you'll be one down thanks to Goofy's absence. You could summon a Disney character. You could use magic. You could use a limit. You could use a combination of these. You can basically do anything you want, is what I'm trying to say. The enemies you face off against all encourage you to dispatch them in different ways, especially on critical. The smaller Heartless flock in groups, promoting the use of AoE finishers and magic, while the larger spiked Heartless are fewer in number, but promote a more methodical approach thanks to their increased damage output and somewhat devastating combos on higher difficulties. The incredible part about Kingdom Hearts 2 is that almost every option is viable for every situation. Some enemies might heavily discourage certain playstyles, like the Dancers. Their grab is scarily powerful and can one-shot you on critical, so keeping your distance and using magic is definitely encouraged, but there's nothing stopping you from attempting to juggle them, thus preventing their grab attack from activating at all. Not only is the choice yours, your arsenal rapidly expands as you progress further into the game, both with level ups and by defeating bosses. In a genius move, you don't necessarily rely on all your abilities to be earned strictly through level up. Now, certain stat and ability drops come straight through reaching specific checkpoints throughout the game. A welcome change is someone who hates grinding and a perfect reward for defeating a boss. You'll unlock new limits with Donald and Goofy, new dry forms, new magic upgrades, new keyblades, new summons, new combos, new combo finishers, new combo modifiers. It's kinda insane to think about just how much exists mechanically. Every single world has a new partner character who comes with their own unique limit attack, meaning that at the very least, every world has something new to offer to the base combat, even if only a little. Most bosses and enemies have something unique about them, be it an action command, a behavior, or revenge value. Essentially, there's never a dull moment. One day you're jumping into a chandelier and driving it into a Heartless, the next day you're taking out water minions, the next day you're throwing presents up at Oogie Boogie, the next day you're managing Sark and the MCP at the same time, the next day you're slicing through buildings and ascending a mechanical dragon. Any of your magic spells can be incorporated into a combo at any point in that combo. You could use a thunder finisher instead of your melee finisher, or proceed into a fire combo near the beginning of a melee combo. This allows spells like Magnet and Reflect a sense of usefulness you might not initially expect. Reflect more reliably defends against enemy attacks while dishing back that same damage, and Magnet pulls every enemy into one place, allowing for a fire or thunder follow-up within the same combo. The fact that combos can be so flexible like this is the reason that magic feels useful throughout. If you weren't allowed to pull out a Reflect mid-combo, would it really be as useful? If you weren't able to Magnet into a Slide Dash Vicinity Break, would Magnet really be as useful? Those combo modifiers are the very reason not even melee combos can be classified as Mash X to win. Slapshot allows you to throw an enemy airborne and begin a juggle without needing to jump beforehand and begin an aerial combo. It also allows for more flexibility during said aerial combo, as you can pull out quick sideways slashes with the square button for increased single target damage. Drive forms add a completely new layer to combo mixes. Each form has its own set of unique melee and magic attacks, which as you can imagine makes each of them feel distinct. Valor is completely melee focused with flashy new combos and combo modifiers expanding aerial combat specifically, whereas Wisdom form has a very lackluster set of melee combos with an incredibly useful set of spells. Master form goes on to combine both approaches into a ferocious blend of melee and magic combat, and the hidden final form goes on to further refine that approach into the ultimate drive form, one that can even break revenge value if played correctly. Limit form, added in the final mix version, might initially seem pointless by comparison, but it's important to remember that Limit form is the only drive form Sora can use without another party member, making it the go-to form for one-on-one encounters and a nice slice of nostalgia for the KH1 combo and Limit set. If even that starts to bore you, almost every summon has its own purpose. Stitch can be used to gradually restore MP, meaning that he's a go-to summon for prolonged magic use. Chicken Little is a great early alternative to Magnet and serves as an interesting spacing utility. Peter Pan provides a free revive in the form of Tinkerbell, while also being able to bypass revenge value if used correctly. And while comparatively Genie may seem less specifically useful at first, he has by far the most variety of all the summons with his various drive forms, which serve both area of effect and single target damage. It also has arguably the best limit of the four in terms of damage output. There's a specific use case for each of these that simply didn't exist in the first game. Kingdom Hearts 1 certainly had more summons, but less of them served a distinct purpose. Mushu, Simba, and Dumbo feel almost identical in their function, to deal damage. The choice to pick any of them simply comes down to preference, and most of the time you could glide through the first game without thinking about it anyway due to the incredibly useful limits. So, since I didn't and still don't really understand the point of the Genie summon, I found myself more often than not using Bambi and Tinkerbell for their admittedly useful abilities to drop health and MP orbs and auto-heal/revive respectively. That's if I even decided to use them at all. Variety might be this game's strongest asset, but it would be nothing if the game weren't balanced around it. See, Kingdom Hearts 1 was balanced perfectly around what Sora could do. The problem is that Sora couldn't actually do all that much. You could gain enough new combos and limits to lessen the impact, but Sora's options were limited. Only some of the summons were useful for specific situations, and usually the classic air combo would be more reliable anyway. The only time I ever ended up needing to use a summon was against the secret final boss. A boss that I don't even think was well designed. I also think many of the bosses lacked a crucial mechanic that makes the second game such a natural evolution: revenge value. Whether you've heard it or not, if you've played the game, you'll have naturally already adapted to this idea. After a certain number of hits, the boss will stop staggering and immediately retaliate. Sephiroth had this in the first game, but it was harder to pinpoint for me because he already attacked so erratically. Most other bosses were either too large for it to matter, or suffered in some way thanks to their lack of revenge value. Not to say it lacked in nearly the same crippling way as a game like Birth by Sleep, but enough for me to notice that some of the bosses didn't feel right. In the sequel, most bosses benefit from the widespread inclusion of it. The organization fights are highlights of this system, Demyx serving as the clear first example of it, and a significant difficulty spike when I was much younger. I don't struggle with him now, but it's easy to see why I used to. I think the reason Demyx is so hard for the inexperienced Kingdom Hearts player is due to that revenge value not yet being a familiar mechanic. Nothing in the game tells you that Demyx will always retaliate after a set amount of hits. You have to notice that on your own and condition yourself to stop spamming the attack button moving forward and examine your other options. He sends his water pillars in a strange order, placed in strange locations, in an effort to get you paying attention to when and where you should be dodging and punishing his openings. Eventually, you'll become wise to his weaknesses and exploit his various attacks, getting better and better at it until you're eventually a speedrunner using Trinity Limit and Duck Flare to your advantage to down him quicker. Well, that's optional. Almost every single option you take in the Demyx fight can be advantageous to you if you play your cards right. If you're looking to use a lot of MP, Stitch has a great use case here. Or if you're not yet totally competent in your sustain, Chicken Little's health regen system might be more useful to you. If you don't value the use of Donald, Wisdom Form is very useful for spacing, while also providing a quick sense of movement via the ability Quick Run, especially if you haven't yet leveled it so that base Sora can use it. I wouldn't say there's a wrong way to fight Demyx, just as I wouldn't say there are wrong ways to fight any of the organization members. All of them have memorable, learnable movesets with discernible weaknesses to exploit. I specifically enjoy the inclusion of the data organization members, as it allows me to enjoy double the organization goodness while also further invalidating Chain of Memories. It sucks that they can't really be plot relevant, but having the option to fight redesigned versions of Larxene, Zexion, Marluxia, it's a great option to have. It can even enhance the story in a neat way by adding a playable boss fight against Roxas near the end of the game, where before that information was simply conveyed via cutscene. Now you actually need to battle Roxas, and he's no pushover. Again, the game makes sure that you can't easily forget about him and his struggle. Sora feels that power firsthand even in the original, but now you get to feel that power. His rebellious spirit in full force, pulling out all the stops to prove himself. Do I even need to say that The Other Promise by Yoko Shimomura is legendary? Do I even need to say that every single battle theme for every world is outstanding? Do I even need to say that these are some of the best boss battle themes in the history of video games? Do I even need to say that, without any hyperbole, this is my favorite soundtrack in all of video games? Yoko Shimomura enhances every single already great moment. Goofy dying? Play Vim and Vigor. Roxas fighting Sora? Play The Other Promise. About to go up against the big bad in a climactic final fight? Play A Fight to the Death. Not a single song is misplaced. There are actually enough cutscene songs to use this time, and many of those cutscene songs are fun to listen to in their own right, as opposed to most cutscene and event music that's often hyper-situational. As well designed as most of the fights and areas are in a mechanical sense, I guarantee that none of them would be nearly as memorable without the incredible music accompanying them. And that's true for every single game in the series, sure, but for this one in particular, I feel it goes beyond the extraordinary. I can't even count the number of boss fights and encounter themes on two hands. The Lingering Will is almost a culmination of this balance, this vast array of options. You can predict and punish all of his attacks if you have the patience and the fortitude to learn. Trust me, he will absolutely test your mettle. If you aren't using your movement abilities effectively, if you aren't guarding correctly, parrying, using your drive forms and limits correctly, hell, if you just press the wrong button, you'll probably be dead. However, that's on you if it happens. He is the polar opposite of the Enigmatic Man, a true test of the Kingdom Hearts 2 mechanical skill set. To stand a chance in hell, you'll need to level up your movement abilities in the first place, which likely already means you've at least cleared the Cavern of Remembrance and the Data Org fights within it, so defeating him at the very end of your journey proves that you've mastered the game and all of its mechanics. He has a revenge value you can watch out for, all of his attacks can be dodged, guarded, or parried in some form, and he has one of the best unique songs in the entire series. It isn't quite as simple as you pulling out your entire arsenal, though. While it might seem like all the options I've gone over would make Sora an undefeatable badass, where there is smart balancing, there is always a cost. Each magic attack costs a set amount of MP, and when that bar is fully drained, it begins a recharge process indicated by the purple glow. During this process, you can't use any of your magic spells, limits, or summons, a fairly crippling wait period. Now, you might then think to use a drive form, which is all fine and good, except there's a separate bar governing the use of drives. If both that bar and the MP bar is depleted, all you have left are your guard, parry, melee combos, and movement abilities. Sora is, in effect, neutered until you wait out that MP recovery period or land enough hits to recharge the drive gauge. You might argue that the stockpile of ethers and elixirs might bypass said MP recovery phase, but I think that can be said of any RPG in existence. Grinding for items and levels is nothing new to RPGs, and can completely break a game's sense of costs, so I'm only really looking within the context of what the game provides you. Provided you go after every secret chest and are using said items somewhat frequently, you won't ever reach a situation where spamming them is even possible. Plus, you could even say that the act of using an ether or elixir is an action in and of itself, one that can easily be exploited by the tougher boss fights if you aren't careful. It's handled much better than in Kingdom Hearts 1, where the MP bar wouldn't fully deplete after using Cure. It meant that spamming Cure while brute force attacking was a viable option. Perhaps another reason experimentation wasn't facilitated particularly well. As well as Kingdom Hearts 2 handles cost, it's only fair of me to point out the one instance in which it could have done better: Anti-Form. It's fairly clear the purpose Anti-Form serves when you pursue information on it. It is a punishment for using drive forms too frequently, and I enjoy it as a punishment. Fact is, drive forms can be incredibly powerful even given their two costs: sacrificing party members and depleting your drive gauge. The idea that there's yet another cost for the overuse of drive isn't too outlandish. It's the execution of this particular cost that gets to me. See, when I was younger, I had no idea what Anti-Form was supposed to do. As far as I knew, it just randomly appeared sometimes when I used the drive form. I couldn't even guess as to what purpose it ultimately served, whereas I immediately understood that the purple MP bar was a recovery phase brought on by the overuse of magic or limits. For as much as people decry tutorials, I welcome them as long as they are fairly unobtrusive. The quick menu screens we get in Kingdom Hearts 2 might not be the most effective method at communicating information, but they do a good job packing a lot of detail into a brief set of pictures and words. It seems a little counterintuitive that not a single one of these screens mention Anti-Form at all. Hey, I can tell you how it works right now. There's an in-game counter that raises the probability of Anti-Form activating every time you use a drive form. That counter is then lowered after Anti-Form is activated, a new drive form is obtained, or when Final Form is used. I can tell you this, but the game can't. Again, this is a fantastic check for an overuse of your drive forms. Its attacks are long and drawn out, and they're the only thing Sora can do when in said form. He can't use items, magic, or manually revert. You need to wait out the drive gauge with practically none of your abilities. When you understand how it works, I think it's a great punishment, but that point will be lost on the majority of new players that don't have access to this information. This lack of communication, or dare I say, play conditioning, is the reason why many people can't fully grasp the utility of anything but the base drive and magic spells. The game itself puts the onus on the player to experiment with the various options available to them and figure out which functions each can effectively serve. Demyx will poke and prod you in that direction, but there's nothing in the base game that explicitly tells you that Magnet is useful for crowd control, or that Wisdom is more useful when using magic. Normally, I would lambast a game for doing this. Hell, I lambasted Earthbound for this very reason. Yet, I think the reality is that Kingdom Hearts 2 is an action game at its core, and most action games are hard to unwrap on your first go. You won't understand everything about Bayonetta or Devil May Cry until that second, third, fourth playthrough. The same is true for Kingdom Hearts 2, despite its RPG elements. You better believe that when I first played it, I would activate Wisdom Form and spam the X button, blissfully unaware of its other uses. I would never pull out summons, I never used Magnet or Reflect. I prioritized only the options that would result in immediate, short-term damage. Only with time did I slowly but surely begin to understand the technical depth present in the combat system. Honestly, that's a barrier I'm willing to put up with for a game that's already more accessible than most other action games. It lowers the skill floor farther than any action game I've ever seen without lowering that skill ceiling. So, the variety is balanced by the brilliant encounter design, that much is certain. Though another reason it works as well as it does is thanks to an overall faster pace. Everything is faster compared to the original. Attacks come out faster, combos last longer, you do more damage because you land hits faster. The progression from world to world feels faster since they're much simpler, and entering them via Gummy Ship is only done once. Not to mention, the Gummy Ship missions themselves are much more involved. While it doesn't directly correlate to the speed of the combat, the camera is zoomed farther out, making it much easier to keep track of the more hectic enemy encounters. I guess I'll just say there's a reason this game in particular has a huge speedrunning community. I can't tell you how many times I've casually run through this game. Every boss and encounter placement makes sense, even if not every boss is amazing. It's more important to me that bosses are placed far enough apart to allow the normal encounters to still feel important, while not far enough away as to lessen their impact. Since almost every boss has a unique trick or gimmick, and you're not continually fighting Heartless or nobodies in between, it's hard to reach a point where what you're doing is boring. Maybe you reach that dumb minigame in Halloween Town where you shoot presents at Lock, Shock, and Barrel, or escort Lumiere to the lanterns under a time limit in Beast's Castle, or play for a bit on the Light Cycle course in Space Paranoids. None of these minigames last very long at all, and serve to break up the combat in an unobtrusive way as a result. Now, I'm not going to argue that variety for the sake of variety is always a good idea. It leads to areas like the Pride Lands and Atlantica feeling extremely out of place. I still enjoy Atlantica in the first game for what it was, and I feel the same way about the Pride Lands, but to a lesser extent. See, in the original, the combat wasn't as fast-paced or skill-intensive as this game often is. Having a slower-paced world where you couldn't use some of your abilities made sense, at least in theory. Pride Lands suffers more because the options in Kingdom Hearts 2 are so good and so fun that being without them for an extended period of time is both boring and frustrating. I can't even begin to tell you how annoying the Scar boss fight is, since the game treats the fight as if you have every ability Sora does. In reality, you can't dodge or guard, you have none of your movement abilities, your combos are all messed up, and especially on critical, I had to just use the Simba limit near the end of the fight when he went into his invincible dark mode because running around the arena doesn't sit well with a lock-on camera, and Scar inevitably shifted his running direction to catch me off guard. Ooh, what a fun fucking fight. I had similar issues fighting some of the normal Heartless, which are so much harder to deal with when you lack many of your reliable defensive options. It isn't even as useful to learn Cub Sora's new moveset since it only ever applies to the Pride Lands, in contrast to the Atlantica control scheme which appears again in several boss fights. Atlantica in this game, funny enough, might be worse than it was in the original. I liked the change of pace it provided in the first game, but I hate the change of pace it provides in a sequel that really doesn't need it. It's a horrible rhythm minigame world where none of your button presses correspond to the rhythm. It's simple, easy, and makes the story of the first game even weaker as it has to retcon almost everything that happened in the first game in order for it to make sense when they ultimately regurgitate the movie plot again. It completely misses the point of the excellent 100 Acre Wood in all three of these games, which have an assortment of unique minigames you can tackle at your own pace. Were Atlantica to go down that direction, I think it could have still been really fun without combat. Even raising this criticism, I can immediately come back and say that all three of these worlds are 100% optional. You never even need to open the way to Atlantica or the Pride Lands to beat the game, so in a sense, it only requires you do the fun stuff. The rest can be considered optional content among the plethora of optional objectives that I've already talked about. Mushroom Heartless return in the form of the Mushroom 13, each with their own gimmicks to exploit, and the overall synthesis grind has been streamlined a hell of a lot. In the original, getting the Ultima Keyblade was wrapped within almost all of the optional content present in the game, besides the optional bosses, and the way it was framed almost ruined it outright. Kingdom Hearts 2 fixes this by lowering the very strict requirements of the original and adding so many extras that obtaining the Ultima Keyblade is mostly done while you're doing other stuff anyway. I never felt like I had to focus intently on gathering the materials for the Ultima Keyblade until I was nearing the end of the recipe. I also prefer finding Oraclecoms in secret preset locations to fighting the same gimmick Heartless over and over. Sephiroth returns and is just as difficult as he's always been, though it really is hard to say which version of him is more challenging. On the one hand, Kingdom Hearts 1 feels more limited, and as a result he might feel harder than he actually is, while Kingdom Hearts 2 is less limited, but that only makes his moveset more erratic than it used to be. Either way, I think he's a fun fight just like all the others, though still maybe a bit too hectic for my liking. The Hades Cups replace the Colosseum Cups, and I've already gone into detail about the data organization and lingering will. There's just a lot to do, and the pace at which you tackle it all is expertly handled. The coup de grace of this trifecta, variety, balance, pacing, is Critical Mode, one of the best difficulty options I have ever played. I remember getting a lot of comments on my God of War 1 retrospective along the lines of, well, if the combat is so boring, why not just play on hard mode? To which I say, what would that fix? God of War's hard mode functions like most other hard modes. The enemies get bigger health bars, and they deal more damage to you. The former is the part I take issue with. Simply making each enemy and boss a bullet sponge won't fix the core of the problem. In fact, in most cases, it accentuates the problem. Battles will last longer, the runtime will go up, and you'll just get more frustrated. Kingdom Hearts 2 sidesteps this problem by only changing the amount of damage you take, not the amount of damage the bosses and enemies take. You actually do a little more damage to the bosses and enemies. They also give you more abilities at the very beginning of Critical, ensuring that Critical Mode serves as an unobtrusive challenge mode and an effective gateway to learning the intricacies of the in-depth combat system. I absolutely love it, even if it kicks my royal ass. It all just clicks during the final act. Everything about the game, the series, crescendos at this moment. Xemnas is egging you on, you slice through buildings, jump across buildings, inch your way up this massive dragon, destroying it piece by piece, until you fight Xemnas one-on-one as he throws the entire arsenal of the organization at you. Zaldin's spears, Demyx's water minions, Xigbar's guns, and then, just when you think everything is over, he seeks vengeance. All of a sudden you're doing a gummy ship mission, and you're fighting him one-on-one again as he taunts both Sora and Riku about their past, in an attempt to manipulate them to his side.
Sora, are you certain you can trust Riku? Riku, are you sure you're not jealous of Sora? Sora, Riku, there is falsehood within your hearts.
It all ends with a battle in a black and white dream space, a true fight to the death. I mean, you deflect thousands of energy bullets in this fight alone. How could you ask for something more epic, more climactic, more hype? The music fits every situation. Each and every boss strikes a good balance between variety and mechanical solidarity, making for one of the best final acts in any game I've ever played. Sometimes I keep a save before entering so I can keep reliving this final act, so that I can keep reliving the opening notes to my favorite song, A Fight to the Death. Watching Sora cut through those buildings never gets old, I tell ya. Lots of people complain about these simple triangle presses, but don't tell me that doing stuff like this doesn't make you feel better than if you just walked up to Xemnas instead. I love this game, if it wasn't already blatantly obvious. I've never really felt anything like playing this game over and over. I've never connected more strongly with a soundtrack, I've never loved a set of bosses and villains so damn much, I've never played a game quite like what Kingdom Hearts 2 is. It's what I look for in games. Unique experiences. My favorite games are all experiences I can't find anywhere else, for one reason or another. In this case, I haven't seen a game so accessible yet so polished, so insane yet so coherent, so dumb yet so meaningful. As I sit here writing about it, gushing everywhere about how great a sequel it is, how much I've played it, how much I still think about it, I can safely say that it's my favorite game of all time. I go back and forth a lot on this stuff because I don't like making statements that I'll ultimately regret, but I'm certain about this one, and I'm certain many of my friends have noticed this. Kingdom Hearts 2 is special, and I don't think I would be even remotely the same without it. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this love letter for all intents and purposes. If you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon. You don't have to donate, but the ones that do have my eternal gratitude. I'd like to thank a few select patrons. Lord Arceus, Dominique Gendron Langla, Lucas Waldeck, That Guy in the Store, nice username, Brian Rawson, Chuck Harkins, Cameron Douglas, Bishamon, my own father, not even joking about that, Mackenzie Marchbank, Purus Bordeaux, Duke091, and Christopher Knoll. Please discuss this video in the comments below. What are your opinions on Kingdom Hearts 2? What do you think of my opinions on Kingdom Hearts 2? Let's get a discussion going, because that's all I really care about. You don't have to like or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Not about that. My name has been King K, and I hope you have some well-deserved fun today.
You seek answers. You feel nothing. Nothing is real. I can give you purpose.
Roxas.
That is right, the new you.